So we're back with more scary stories to tell in the dark. Like there's another book. I think he made 3 or 4 books, and this is one of them. I don't know what order they go into, but I just got it. So like the other one, it has sections. There's one, two, three, four sections, and there's a number of stories in each section. So we're gonna start off with the first one, and this one is called Hoo Ha's. Okay, it says these scary stories will take you on a strange and fearsome journey, where darkness or fog or mist or sound of a person screaming or a dog howling turns ordinary places into nightmarish places, where nothing is what you expect. People have been telling scary stories for as long as anyone knows. From the first, they were from the first they were tales of supernatural creatures that people feared would harm. Wait, that people feared would harm them. Okay, there's a whole bunch of other stuff about the scary stories and how they have a serious purpose and everything. I don't want to read through that. I'm just going to start off with the first story. And the first story is when she came. When she came. Oh no. When she saw him, she screamed and ran. This chapter is filled with ghost stories. In one, a man has just become a ghost, but doesn't know it yet. In another, a pirate ship and crew return from a watery grave. And there are other frightful events. Alright, first story is something was wrong. One morning, John Sullivan found himself walking along a street downtown. He could not explain what he was doing earlier, or how he got there, or where he had been earlier. He didn't even know what time it was. He saw a woman walking toward him and stopped her. "I'm afraid I forgot my watch," he said, and smiled. "Can you tell me the time?" When she saw him, she screamed and ran. Ooh. He must be really ugly. Then John Sullivan noticed that other people were afraid of him. When they saw him coming, they flattened themselves against the building, or ran across the street to stay out of his way. There must be something wrong with me, John Sullivan thought. I'd better go home. He hailed a taxi, but the driver took one look at him and sped off. Okay. John Sullivan did not understand what was going on, and it scared him. Maybe somebody at home can come and get me, he thought. He found a telephone and called his wife, but a voice he did not recognize answered. "Is Mrs. Sullivan here?" "There." Well, it could be the same thing, right? He asked. "No, she is at a funeral." Oh, God. The voice said, "Mr. Sullivan was killed yesterday in an accident downtown." Whoa. That's crazy. The next story is The Wreck. It says, Fred and Jean went to the same high school, but they met for the first time at the Christmas dance. Fred had come by himself, and so had Jean. Soon, Fred decided that Jean was one of the nicest girls he had ever met. They danced together most of the evening. At 11 o'clock, Jean said, "I have to leave now." Wait, at 11 o'clock, At 11 o'clock, Jean said, "I have to leave now. Can you give me a ride?" "Sure," he said. "I've got to go home too. I accidentally drove my car into a tree on my way over here." "Oh, God," Jean said. "I guess I wasn't paying attention." She drove her car into a tree. What is she doing at the dance if she drove her car into a tree? Shouldn't you be more concerned about doing something about the car? But I guess she just wanted to party or something. Whatever. Fred drove her to the head of the to the head of Brady Road. It was in a neighborhood he didn't know very well. "Why don't you drop me off here?" Jean said. The road is up ahead and the road up ahead is in really bad condition. I can walk from here." Fred stopped the car and held out some tinsel. "Have some," he said. "I got it at the dance." Isn't tinsel like a flower or something? I don't have my phone, so I cannot look it up. It's all the way over there. I don't want to get up and get it. Okay. I'll look it up later. Where did I start off? Where did I leave off at? Oh, here. "I got it at the dance." "Thank you," she said. I'll I'll put it in my hair and I'll put it in my hair, and she did. "Would you like to go out sometime? To a movie or something?" Fred asked. "That would be fun," Jean said. After Fred drove off, he realized that he did not know Jean's last name or telephone number. "I'll go back," he thought. "The road can't be that bad." He drove slowly down Brady Road through a thick woods. Excuse me. Through a thick woods. But there wasn't a sign of Jean. As he came around a curve, he saw the wreckage of a car ahead. It had crashed into a tree and had caught fire. Smoke was still rising from it. As Fred made his way to the car, he could see someone trapped inside, crushed against the steering column. It was Jean, and her hair was the Christmas tinsel he had given her. So she was a ghost. Wasn't there an urban legend of a woman that's a ghost? And people pick her up. She hitchhikes and wants to get to a certain place that she died at. It sounds something like that. Okay. Next story is one Sunday morning. Ida always went to the 7 o'clock. No. Ida always went to the 7 o'clock Sunday morning service at her church. Usually she heard the clanging of the church bells while she was eating breakfast. But this morning, she heard them while she was still in bed. That means I'm late, she thought. Ida jumped out of bed, quickly dressed, and left without eating and looking at the clock. That's what I do at work. Well, when I get ready to go to work, I just leave out without eating. I don't do it all the time, though. It was still dark outside, but it usually was dark at this time of year. Ida was the only one on the street. The only sounds she heard were the clatter of her shoes on the pavement. Everybody must already be in church, she thought. Ida took a shortcut through the cemetery. That's not a good idea, but if it works, it works, and something about that is telling me that it's not going to work this time. Then she quietly slipped into the church and found a seat. Never mind. The service had already begun. When she caught her breath, Ida looked around. The church was filled with people she had never seen before. But the woman next to her did look familiar. Ida smiled at her. It's Josephine Kerr, she thought. But she's dead. She died a month ago. Suddenly, Ida felt uneasy. She looked around again. As her eyes began to adjust to the dim light, Ida saw some skeletons in suits and dresses. This is a service for the dead, Ida thought. Everybody here is dead, except me. Ida noticed that some of them were staring at her. They looked angry, as if she had no business there. Josephine Kerr leaned toward her and whispered, "Leave right after the benediction, if you care for your life." When the service came to an end, the minister gave his blessing. "The Lord bless you and keep you," he said. "The Lord make his face to shine upon you." Ida grabbed her coat and walked quickly towards the door. When she heard footsteps behind her, she glanced back. Several of the dead were coming toward her. Others were getting up to join them. The Lord lift up his countenance to you, the minister went on. Ida was so frightened she began to run. Out the door she ran. With a pick of with a pick. What? With a pack. Pack. With a pack of shrieking ghosts at her heels. Get out, one of them screamed. Another shouted, You don't belong here, and ripped her coat away. As Ida ran through the cemetery, a third grabbed the hat from her head. I hope she makes it out. Don't come back, it screamed, and it shook its arm at her. By the time Ida reached the street, the sun was rising, and the dead had disappeared. Did this really happen? Ida asked herself, or have I been dreaming? That afternoon, one of Ida's friends brought over her coat and hat, or what was left of them. They had been found in the cemetery, torn to shreds. So maybe it was real. Okay. We got like 4 more stories. This is gonna be a long video. Okay, this one is called Sounds. The house was near the beach. It was a big old place where nobody had lived for years. From time to time, somebody would force open a window or a door and spend the night there, but never longer. 3 fishermen caught in a storm took shelter there one night. With some dry wood they found inside. They made a fire in the fireplace. They lay down on the floor and tried to get some sleep. But none of them slept that night. First, they heard footsteps upstairs. It sounded like there were several people moving back and forth. When one of the fishermen called, Who's up there? The footsteps stopped. Then they heard a woman scream. The scream turned into a groan and died away. Blood began to drip from the ceiling into the room where the fishermen huddled. A small red pool formed on the floor and soaked into the wood. A door upstairs crashed shut, and again the woman screamed. Not me, she cried. It sounded as if she was running, her high heels tapping wildly down the hall. I'll get you, a man shouted, and the floor shook as he chased her. Then silence. There wasn't a sound until the man who had shouted began to laugh. Long peals of horrible laughter filled the house. It went on until the fishermen thought they would go mad. When finally it stopped, the fishermen had someone coming down the stairs. Had someone. The fishermen heard someone coming down the stairs, dragging something heavy that bumped on each step. They heard him drag it through the front hall and out the front door. The door opened. Then it slammed shut. Again, silence. Suddenly, a flash of lightning filled the house with a green blaze of light. A ghastly face stared at the fishermen from the hallway. Then came a crash of thunder. Terrified, they ran out into the storm. Frightening. I feel like aesthetically, that's pretty cool. Okay. Next story is A Weird Blue Light. Late one night in October 1864, a Confederate blockade runner slipped by some Union gunboats at the entrance to Galveston Bay in Texas and made it safely to port with its cargo of food and other necessities. Lewis Billings, the master of the small vessel, was getting ready to weigh anchor when he was startled by a shriek from one of the crew. A strange old-fashioned schooner. Schooner? Whatever that word means. I'll have to look that one up too. Schooner. Whatever. With the big black flag was rushing down at us. Billings said later. She was afire with the sort of weird pale blue light that lighted up every nook and cranny of her. Ghost Rider. That's what I think of when I hear that. It sounds like Ghost Rider. The crew was pulling at the ropes and doing other work, and they paid us no attention, didn't even glance our way. They all had ghastly bleeding wounds, but their faces and eyes were those of dead men. The man who had shrieked had fallen to his knees, his teeth chattering as he gasped out a prayer. Overcoming my own terror, that was chilling the very marrow of my bones. I rushed forward, shouting to the others as I ran. Suddenly the schooner vanished before my eyes. Some say that it was the ghost of Jean Lafitte, whatever. Jean Lafitte's pirate ship, Pride, that sank off Galveston Island in 1821, or 1822. She was seen again in 1892, in the same waters with the same crew. That rhymes. I wonder if that's real or is that made up. Jean Lafitte, pirate ship. She was a pirate. Okay, the next story is somebody fell from a loft. A loft. This one's kind of a long story. This is 3 pages. The stories before this was maybe like, no, this is not 3 pages. This is 4 pages, essentially. Because the stories before this, they were like maybe 2 pages at the most. 1 to 2 pages. Alright. I had signed on as an ordinary seaman as an ordinary seaman on the Falls of Ettrick, a merchant ship bound for England. The first time I saw that ship, I knew her right away. She was the old Gertrude Spurshoe. I had sailed on her years before when she was painted brown and gold. Now she was painted black and had a new name. But it was the same ship for sure. We had a pretty good crew for that voyage, except for one hard-looking ticket named McLaurin. He was a pretty good seaman, but there was something about him that I didn't trust. He was kind of secretive, kept mostly to himself. One day, somebody told him that I had worked on the old Gertrude. For some reason, he got all a tremble over that. Then I catched him. Then I catched him. Ketched. Catched. Is that real? Then I think you say then I caught him. But I'll read it as it is. It says catched. Then I catched him, giving all these ugly black looks, as if he was itching to knife me in the back. I guess it had something to do with the Gertrude, but I didn't know what. Well, this one day, he was trying to work our way through a dripping black fog. You'd scarcely know we had all the lights on. It was dead calm. There wasn't a breath of fresh air. The ship just lay there wallowing in a trough, rolling, going nowheres. Nowheres. No, it's literally nowheres. Like, you just say nowhere, but nowheres. It's funny to me. I was standing on watch around midships, and McLaurin was doing his trick at the wheel. The rest of the crew was scattered around one place and another. It was as quiet as could be. Then all at once, wacko! This thing hits the deck right in front of McLaurin. He lets go a screech that turns my blood cold, and he falls down in a faint. The second mate starts yelling that somebody has fallen from aloft. Laying out there, just forward of the wheel, was someone, or something, dressed in oilskins with blood oozing out from underneath. The captain ran and fetched a big light from his cabin so he could see who it was. They kind of straightened him out to get a good look at his face. He was a big, ugly looking devil, but nobody knew who he was or what he was doing up there. At least nobody was saying. When McLaurin came to from his faint, they tried to get something out of him. All he did was jabber away and keep rolling those big, wild-looking eyes of his. Everybody was getting more and more excited. We all wanted to heave the body overboard as quickly as we could. There was something weird about it, as if it wasn't real. But the captain wasn't so sure about getting rid of it that way. Could it be a stowaway? He asked. But the ship was so filled with lumber we were carrying, there was no space where a living thing could hide for 3 weeks, which is how long we had been out. Even if it was a stowaway, what was it doing aloft on such a dirty day? There was no reason for anyone to be up there. There was nothing to see. Finally, the captain gave up and told us to heave him overboard. Then nobody would touch him. The mate ordered us to pick him up, but nobody made a move. Then he tried coaxing, but that didn't do any good. Suddenly, that loony Lauren starts yelling. I handled him once, and I can handle him again. He picks up the body and staggers over to the railing. He is just about to throw it overboard when it wraps his 2 big long arms around him, and over they go together. Then on the way down, one of them starts laughing in a horrible way. The mates are yelling to launch a boat, but nobody would get into a boat, not on a night like this. We threw a couple of life preserves after them, but everybody knew they wouldn't help. So that was that. Or was it? The first chance I had to go home after that, I went right over to see old Captain Spurshoe, who was captain when Gertrude was around. Well, he says, one trip these 2 outlandish men shipped aboard the Gertrude. One was McLaurin, the other was a really big fella. The big one was always picking on McLaurin and thumping him around, and McLaurin was always talking about how he would get back at him. Well, this wet, dirty night, the 2 of them was up there alone, and the big one come flying down, killed himself deaders in a herring. Killed himself deader in a herring. Huh? What? McLaurin says the foot rope they were using parted and how he almost fell himself. But everyone who saw that rope knew she didn't give away on her own. She had been cut through with a knife. After that, whenever we came to port, McLaurin thought we were going to get the police after him, and he'd get pretty scared. But we couldn't prove anything, so we didn't try. In the end, I guess the big fella took care of things in his own way. If he was a ghost that came back, that's what he was. If there be things like ghosts. Okay. Whatever. That was a pretty good story. Alrighty. We got 2 more to go. This one is called The Little Black Dog. Billy Mansfield said that little black dog followed him wherever he went. But he was the only one who saw it, so people thought he was kind of crazy. To drive the dog away, Billy was always hollering at it, throwing rocks at it, but the dog always came back. The first time Billy saw that dog was the day he fought Silas Burton. Billy was just a young man then, but the Burtons and Billy's family had been feuding for years. When Billy saw Silas riding toward him, he went for his gun, and Burton went for his. but Billy fired first. He hit Burden in the back, knocking him from his horse. Burden's horse ran off, and his gun fell where he couldn't reach it. He lay there on the ground, pleading with Billy not to do what? Not to kill him, of course. But Billy killed him anyway. Burden's little black dog was with him when he was shot. The dog kept licking Burton's face and barking and snarling at Billy. In his anger, Billy killed the dog too. What? There wasn't much law enforcement in those days, so Billy wasn't arrested. But all that night, he heard Burton's dog outside his cabin. Outside his cabin, scratching on his door and barking to be let in. I'm imagining this, Billy said to himself. I shot that dog. It's dead. But the next morning, Billy saw the dog. It was waiting for him outside. From then on, there was not a day when he didn't see it. But there wasn't a night when he didn't hear it scratching on his door, barking to be let in. From then on, Billy was always finding a black dog hairs on the sofa, on the floor, in his bed, even in his food. Ugh. And the house and the yard stank of dog. That's what Billy said. Whenever somebody told him there wasn't any dog to see, he'd say, maybe you don't see it, but I do. And I'm not any crazier than you are. Things went on like that for many years. Then one morning in the middle of the winter, the neighbors didn't see any smoke coming out of Billy's chimney. Oh boy. When they went over to check, Billy wasn't there. A day or so later, they found his body laying in the snow in the field back A day or so later, they found his body lying in the snow in a field back of his cabin. Okay. Billy had plenty of enemies, and at first it seemed like somebody might have killed him, but there wasn't a mark on his body. There weren't any footprints out there, except for Billy's. The doctor said Billy probably died of old age, but there was something odd about his death. When the neighbors found Billy, there were black dog hairs on his clothes. There were even a few on his face. It smelled like dog had been out there, yet no one had seen a dog anywhere. That kind of reminds me of the other story in the other book. I think it was the White Wolf. I really like that. Where the guy tied a sheep to the tree to lure out the white wolf. The wolf didn't eat the sheep. It just ate and killed him. Instead, they didn't find footprints when they found him. He was just dead. That kind of reminds me of that story. And this is the last story. This is called Clinkety Clink. An old lady got sick and died. She had no family and no close friends, so the neighbors got a grave digger to dig a grave for her. And they had a coffin made, and they placed it in her living room. As was the tradition, they washed her body and dressed her up in her best clothes and put her in the coffin. When she died, her eyes were wide open, staring at everything and seeing nothing. The neighbors found 2 old silver dollars on her dresser, and they put them on her eyelids to keep them closed. They lit candles and sat up with her so that she would not be too lonely on that first night that she was dead. The next morning, a preacher came and said a prayer for her. Then everybody went home. Later, the gravedigger arrived to take her to her cemetery and bury her. He stared at the silver dollars on her eyes, and he picked them up. How shiny and smooth they were, how thick and heavy. They're beautiful, he thought, just beautiful. He looked at the dead woman. With her eyes wide open, he felt she was staring at him, watching him hold her coins. It gave him a creepy feeling. He put the coins back on those eyes of hers to keep them closed. But before he knew it, his hands reached out again and grabbed the coins and stuck them in his pocket. He's being a thief. Thievery, thievery. Then he grabbed a hammer and quickly nailed shut the lid on the coffin. Now you can't see anything, he said to her. Then he took her out to the cemetery and he buried her as fast as he could. When the gravedigger got home, he put the two silver dollars in a tin box and shook it. The coins made a cheerful, rattling sound, but the gravedigger didn't. But the gravedigger wasn't feeling cheerful. He couldn't forget those eyes looking at him. When it got dark, a storm came up, and the wind started blowing. It blew all around the house. It came in through the cracks and around the windows and down the chimney. Bazoo! It went. Bzz, bzz, bzz. You know how the wind is, the cold wind is when it starts going really, really strong. The fire flared and flickered. That was supposed to be the noise. The gravedigger threw some fresh wood on the fire, got into bed, and pulled the blankets up to his chin. The wind kept blowing. Bazoo, and went. Bzz, bzz, bzz. It's close, but not close enough, I don't think. The fire flared and flickered and cast evil-looking shadows on the walls. The gravedigger lay there thinking about the dead woman's eyes staring at him. The wind blew stronger and louder, and the fire flared and flickered and popped and snapped. He got more and more scared. Suddenly, he heard another sound. Clinkety clink, clinkety clink, clinkety clink. It went clinkety clink, clinkety clink. It was the silver dollars rattling on the tin box. Uh-oh. Hey, the gravedigger shouted. Who's taking my money? Who's taking my money? Oh man, they got a picture of her right here. This is disturbing. But all he heard was the wind blowing. Bzzz, bzzz, and the flames and the flames flaring and flickered. No, and the flames flaring and flickering, snapping and popping, and the coins going clickety clink, clickety clink. He leaped out of bed and chained up the door. Then he hurried back, but his head had barely touched the pillow when he heard clickety clink, clunkety clink. Then he heard something way off in the distance. It was a voice crying, "Where's my money? Who's got my money? Who? And the wind blew, busy, bazoo. And the fire flared and flickered and snapped and popped, and the money went clinkety clink, clinkety clink. The gravedigger was really scared. He got out of bed and piled all the furniture against the door, and he put a heavy iron skillet over the tin box. Well, that's one way to do it. Then he jumped back into bed and covered his head with the blankets, but the money rattled louder than ever, and way off a voice cried. Another yawn, excuse me. Give me my money. Who's got my money? Who? And the wind blew, and the fire flared and flickered and snapped and popped, and the gravedigger shivered and shook and cried, "Oh lordy, lordy!" Suddenly the door flew open. Suddenly the front door flew open, and in walked the ghost of the dead woman with her eyes wide open, staring at everything and seeing nothing. And the wind blew. Busy bee, buzzy, boo, 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 blah, blah, blah. And the money went clinkety clink, clinkety clink. And the fire flared and flickered and snapped and popped. And the ghost of the dead woman cried, "Oh, where's my money? Who's got my money? Who? And the gravedigger moaned, "Oh, lordy, lord, this is running me crazy. Holy fuck." The ghost could hear her money going clickety clink, clinkety clink in the tin box, but her dead eyes couldn't see the box. So she reached out with her arms and tried to find it. Parentheses, just like the old other book. As you tell the story, stand up with your arms in front of you and begin groping around you. No. The wind went busy, bazoo, and the money rattled clinkety clink, and the fire flared and flickered and snapped and popped, and the gravedigger shivered and shook and moaned, "Oh lordy, lordy!" And the woman cried, "Give me my money. Who's got my money? Who? Parentheses again. Now quickly jump at somebody in the audience and scream, You've got it. No. And that is the end of that section. That story ran me crazy. It was clever, but it ran me crazy. It was clever because like it felt like there was supposed to be some kind of rhythm there, but it just ran me crazy. Like, I guess Weird Blue Light was kind of cool. Sounds, didn't care too much for that one. One Sunday Morning, it was okay. The Wreck was pretty cool. I liked The Wreck. And Something Was Wrong was kind of cool too. The ending to it. Little Black Dog was awesome. I'm gonna say it reminded me of the White Wolf from the other book. But that's all there is. And there's just some more sections, of course. And the next section we will get to is She Was Spitting and Yowling Just Like a Cat. And as I say cat, my cat is actually over here by my foot sniffing on the wall. Okay, that's the end of that. Hopefully, I will get to that next section soon. Maybe tomorrow, maybe not. We'll see. And we can just hope that it's not bad and trash, right? Right.